Hello out there. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Fix Your Plate with Dr. Monique. I am your host, Dr. Monique, the physician in the kitchen, and it is my absolute honor and privilege to come to you every week. I do appreciate so much you using your busy, valuable time to stop and listen to what I have to say. I can't tell you how much that means. And so we're going to get into it. I don't want to waste a minute of your time. You are listening to Fix Your Plate, and I am Dr. Monique. I am a board-certified family physician, two-time best-selling author. My latest book, Doc, Fix My Plate, The Physician in the Kitchen's Prescriptions for Your Healthy Meal Makeover, is available for purchase. I am also a speaker, a blogger, and I help busy households enjoy healthy eating without impacting their hectic schedules. And I talk about how to fix your plate with a more plant-based diet, how you can get more plant-based sources of nutrition into your diet, whether you are fully vegan or you're just kind of dipping your toes in the water. So you can follow me on all social media at Physician in the Kitchen, as well as Dr. Monique May. So today we are continuing our book club series. I'm reading excerpts from my book, Doc, Fix My Plate, and we're doing Dr. Monique's favorite vegan food ABCs. I've talked about how my journey toward a more plant-based diet was kind of fueled with me turning 50, losing my grandmother and other family members to diseases directly related to diet. And so kind of prompted me to write that book, and everything is kind of, been offshoots of that. So along the way, I've been either discovering for the first time or rediscovering foods that can be used to replace traditional sources of protein like chicken, beef, etc. So I'm reading some excerpts from the book, and we are doing our ABCs. So we've done A through G. So today we're going to do H, I, and J. And I've got some, I'm telling you, these are just, I read this and I'm like, wow, like it's good to remind myself of kind of where I've come in my journey and where so much further I have to go, and these little tasty goodies that I've picked up along the way. So before we get into that, I'd like to thank our sponsors, MDM Enterprises, LLC, and May Medical Consulting, PLLC. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to come back and get into the letter H. See you on the other side.
If you want to educate, empower, and inspire our community, we're providing a wonderful opportunity for anyone who feels they can make a positive impact in the lives of others by applying to be an on-air radio personality. To set up an interview, call 877-342-7770. That's 877-342-7770 to apply. This is your chance to step out on faith. This is your chance to get the experience and education that you need in order to launch to the next level of greatness and make a significant difference. WDRB Media is now hiring on-air radio personalities.
All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for listening to me, Dr. Monique, in another episode of Fix Your Plate. So we are doing our ABCs. We're working our way through the alphabet, culinary style. And so today we're doing the letters H, I, and J. So H is for herbs, right? So let's clear up a common area of confusion. People often ask, well, what is the difference between herbs and spices? Both of them add flavor and depth to your dishes. Both come from plants. But herbs are the actual leaves of the plant, while the spices come from the root, the bark, and the seeds. Fresh herbs are so fragrant and really elevate any meal. So I really try to use them whenever I can. They're great to try to grow if you're just starting out your own garden. We've talked about that a few weeks ago. Herbs are a great way to do that, save money. And it's really fulfilling when you see that you're growing something, in your own space. Some of my favorites are fresh cilantro, basil, mint, dill, thyme, tarragon, rosemary, all of those. Sage, as we get into the holiday season, rosemary, thyme, sage, those, traditional kind of poultry mixes definitely come into play. chives, lemongrass, also some of my honorable mentions as well. And I also have quite a few dried spices, right? So you can't always get fresh. So you definitely can rely on some dried spices as well. But let's just review some of the health benefits, because I do this with we talk about what they do in your food, and we also talk about like the health benefits, why you want to incorporate these into your plate. So basil, and a lot of this is going to be repetitive. So basil, we're going to talk about basil, cilantro, dill, and mint, sage as well. So all of those have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. And as we've talked about tons and tons of times before, those properties decrease the risk for chronic diseases such as cancer, heart disease, and arthritis. And they can also help lower blood pressure, cholesterol, and control your blood sugar. Some of these also have antibacterial properties, such as basil. Tarragon is another one that has antibacterial properties. And basil is thought to improve anxiety and depression and may decrease the risk for memory loss related to aging. Cilantro, one of my favorites, it actually made the list all by itself. You have to go back and listen to the letter C. It too has antioxidant properties and is full of fiber, has minerals such as potassium, iron, and calcium. Lemongrass. This is one that I can't find it in my local grocery stores, but I find it in the farmer's market. Don't forget about those farmer's markets, because I'm telling you, they can be bona fide treasure troves for you. Lemongrass helps, though, to relieve upset stomach, so kind of like ginger, right? Headache, upper respiratory infections, and it too has antibacterial and antioxidant effects. A quick word, though, about storing your fresh herbs. So dirt and moisture will make them wilt even quicker than normal. If you're like me, you bring something home and you're like, oh my God, why is it already turning brown? So dirt and moisture can speed up that process. So when you buy them in bunches, when you buy your herbs in bunches, bring them home, rinse them off, untie them, rinse them off in cold water, and then wrap them in damp paper towels or refrigerate them in a resealable bag. That will help to stop some of that aging or wilting process. Basil, you can trim their stems and place them in about 1 inch of water and keep those on the countertop. So just think about this. Where you buy the herb in the grocery store is where you should store it in your home for the most part. So basil, if you think about it, that's out in the aisle usually with the tomatoes and the garlic. It's not refrigerated. The other ones, like chives and thyme, other ones, excuse me, are going to be refrigerated. So you want to keep them in the refrigerator as well. Or, if you dry them out and then freeze them, that would be another way to preserve it too. Don't forget to use your ice cube trays. This is a great way to preserve your herbs. When you put them in the ice cube sections, and then you add some olive oil, freeze them. Now you've got a nice little herb-filled ice cube olive oil combo, and when you need it, you put it in your, whatever you're cooking with, and you'll have that to go. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that dried herbs are much more potent than fresh. So the conversion there is a tablespoon of fresh herbs equals a teaspoon of dried. So if you're doing a recipe and the recipe calls for fresh herbs and all you have are dried, don't fret, but just remember to do that calculation and use 1/3 less of what the recipe calls for if the recipe is asking for fresh herbs. So I have a recipe in the book called Dr. Monique's Mango Muddled Mint Mock Margarita. I dare you to say that fast 5 times. It's a refreshing, colorful drink, and it features fresh mint. So be sure to check that out. It's like getting transported to a tropical island while you're actually sitting in your home. And of course, if you want to make it an adult beverage, as Tabitha Brown would say, that's your business. So that's H. Next is the letter I. And I is for Indian spices. Now, I have to tell you, there are quite a few, plant-based Indian foods that you can either, that are made vegan or that you can recreate as vegan. So when I was trying to come up with the letter I, it's so funny because I couldn't think of, all I could think of was ice cream. And then so I go to Google and I'm searching and it was like all these exotic foods like Imarti and Ioko. I don't even know what those are. So then it hit me, as part of my veganist journey. And I've been trying new things and again, rediscovering familiar things. This ties into, using how do I use those herbs and spices that we just talked about. So I have a bunch of spices. I mean, I have so many that I actually have like 2 spice cabinets. Like, I'm not kidding. So, and I've always used things like cumin and curry and coriander, cinnamon, nutmeg, paprika, turmeric, clove. I mean, you name it. When I began experimenting with Indian food, I was like, wait, a lot of these spices are in this food. So that's how I came up with I for Indian food or Indian spices. So it's so funny because a little backstory. So when I came up with the topic for the letter I needed a recipe because every letter in the book, I tie back to a recipe. So a few nights before I wrote the letter I, I'd had some butter chicken with garlic naan, which is like hands down my favorite Indian dish. And earlier that same day, I had seen a video on social media about someone who was using king oyster mushrooms in place of like pork for barbecue ribs. I was like, there you go. So because I was like, how do I, make this butter chicken not using chicken? And the inspiration came from seeing that video with king oysters. And I had never used king oyster mushrooms. If you've never cooked with king oyster mushrooms, please go find them. You usually can get them like in your local Asian markets. They have a real meaty texture. They're huge and they have a meaty texture. And when you cook them, they are just divine. So I had been experimenting with making a butter chicken recipe using some firm tofu. The texture though wasn't hitting. Okay. And so the oyster mushroom definitely did the trick. So I also use cardamom and fenugreek, which are also featured in Indian foods. And you want to do the green cardamom because there's a black cardamom and they taste completely different. Green cardamom is a really, of course you can use both, but you need to understand that they're not interchangeable. Green cardamom has more of a citrusy, lemony taste, kind of sweet. I use it like when I'm making a lemon cake, I use a little bit of cardamom. That's the secret ingredient. It's a great way to bump up the flavor. So I, of course, have made my own. You can buy it, but from what I understand, when you buy some of the mixes, it may not be a true garam masala. So the best thing is just to get your own ingredients. You can buy them at your local international markets. They're not expensive. And if you've got like a little spice grinder, coffee grinder, you can make your own. So, because remember, I'm like the kitchen gadget junkie, so I have a spice grinder, but it's actually just really fulfilling because now you know that you're getting fresh spices, right? Because we know that spices have a shelf life. I know some of us don't go by that shelf life, but they do. Your spices are not meant to sit in your cabinets forever. So just keep that in mind. Kind of like makeup ladies, right? I have some lipsticks. I don't even want to tell you how old they are, but you're really supposed to be rotating that stuff, your lipstick and your eyeshadow. Same kind of with the spices, same kind of thing. But I will tell you, quick tip: if you're like me, and I'll admit I'm in the club, you're part of my tribe. I hold on to my spices, but a way to kind of freshen or perk them back up is bloom them. You basically put some olive oil in a skillet over low heat and add your spices, and you pretty much cook them until they become fragrant, which doesn't take long. And that's a great way to kind of get more life out of your spices. But typically, if you open up a jar of spices and there's no smell, if you don't smell anything, then that one probably needs to go to the spice graveyard in the sky. So getting back to the garam masala, I make my own. I store it in a recycled glass jar. I have glass jars of various sizes that I've gotten from spaghetti sauce or other spices or whatever. And I can just make my own. I label it. There you go. And I date it so that I know how old it is. So, and garam masala is a great thing if you want to add to like apple cider or tea. You can use it kind of like a mulling spice. It's wonderful, 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 wonderful aroma. Particularly this time of year. It's now November. It's about a week before Thanksgiving. Temperatures are dipping. You want all kinds of warm things. Definitely add some garam masala to your life. So let's talk about some of the health benefits, because again, these things didn't just make the list because they taste good. They made the list because they have health benefits. Cardamom has antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties that help fight bad breath and prevents cavities. Who knew? Fenugreek may, so for you pregnant and lactating women, listen up. Fenugreek may help increase the amount of breast milk produced by lactating women and encourages weight gain in their infants. In men, it can improve testosterone levels and sex drive, okay? And may help lower blood sugar and cholesterol. Coriander, and we've talked about this when we talked about cilantro, because they're from the same plant. The seeds are coriander and the leaves are cilantro. It contains antioxidants and has antibacterial properties, and it may reduce blood sugar, bad cholesterol, and high blood pressure. But definitely more human studies are needed. So are you starting to hear like a theme here? A lot of these are antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, and guess what? They have pretty much 0 calories. And they help you decrease how much salt you're using. These spices and the herbs we talked about earlier, by adding flavor in these manners, in these ways, you don't have to rely on salt as much. So it's win-win-win. Cinnamon has antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. It also has antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal properties. It helps with digestive issue and may help reduce blood sugar and blood pressure. But again, more formal studies are needed to address this specific question. Nutmeg, right? So nutmeg and cinnamon, I buy the huge bottles of these. I make a lot of sweet potato pies for my family, and cinnamon and nutmeg are on rotation all the time in my house. So it too has antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and antibacterial properties, may help boost libido and improve mood. But again, we do need more studies. Cool thing about nutmeg, when you buy it ground, of course, that's how a lot of us think of it, but nutmeg actually looks like a little seed. It looks like an acorn almost. And if you want to make your own fresh ground nutmeg, you would use those. I don't know the proper term with what those are called, but again, they look like the outer part is hard, like an acorn or like a walnut. They look kind of like walnuts almost on the outside. You would need that and like a microplaner or a grater to make your own freshly ground nutmeg. So super cool fact there. Somebody gave me some. She went on a trip, some Caribbean island, I forget where, and she bought me back some fresh nutmeg. I was like, oh my God, I don't think I even knew that was a thing. Like, I didn't know what nutmeg looked like in its original form. Like, we know cinnamon, right? Cinnamon comes with those sticks. But nutmeg doesn't start off as that ground powder you see in the store. It starts off as a like I said, like a hard outer shell that is then ground. So cloves have antioxidant and antibacterial properties, may also help lower blood sugar. And fennel seeds, also antibacterial, antiviral, can help reduce inflammation and help relieve constipation. So tons of benefit from these spices that are used often in Indian foods. And again, they are featured in my vegan, quote unquote, butter chicken, quotes around the chicken recipe, which is just divine. It's got the king oyster mushrooms. And it's, I don't know if you guys, I'm showing my age here, but back in the day on Saturday Night Live, not Billy Crystal, oh gosh, Mike Myers, he used to play this character named Linda Richmond, and she was from Long Island, New York, and she talked like this, the hard R's and all that from New York. And so she used to do this part where she would say things that were misnomers, basically, like Rhode Island is neither a road nor an island. Discuss, talk amongst yourselves. It was hilarious. So butter chicken, there's neither butter nor chicken in this recipe. But served over some basmati rice. All right. So far we have covered H for herbs and I for Indian spices. We're going to take a quick break because again, I need to get my mind right because I'm about to go and I want to eat everything in the refrigerator after doing this. But we're going to come back and we're going to wrap up with the letter J. Hope to see you on the other side.
Calling all business owners, all independent artists, and all nonprofit organizations. If you are in need of radio advertising, we encourage you to call 877-342-7770. That's 877-342-7770. Through their Community Give Back Project, there is an entrepreneur foundation that is paying for free radio advertising. That's right, I said free, F-R-E-E, in support of our small business owners, independent artists, and nonprofit organizations. Please call 877-342-7770 in order to receive your free radio advertising today.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Fix Your Plate with Dr. Monique, and that makes me Dr. Monique, the physician in the kitchen. So we are doing my favorite vegan food ABCs. And earlier, before the break, we did the letter H, which was for herbs, and the letter I, which was for Indian spices. And we went through a whole list of kind of my favorites, their health benefits, and talked about how using them to add flavor to your food, it can actually decrease how much salt you use to flavor your food, which of course helps to decrease fluid retention, helps to decrease blood pressure, which is a risk factor for heart attacks and strokes and all the bad things. So definitely want to have a nice selection of spices and herbs so that you don't have to rely so much on salt. Think about salt as, if you go to the symphony or the orchestra, or the symphony, the orchestra is playing. Think about salt as the conductor. Right? The salt is not really playing an instrument, but it's telling the horns when to play. It's telling the wind instruments, the piano. It brings everything together. It harmonizes, but it's not actually, like, you're not hearing the conductor, right? You're hearing the instruments. Think about salt that way. You shouldn't be tasting the salt, right? The salt is there to enhance the other flavors. So if you're using a lot of these other flavors, the salt won't have to do as much work. So that's my plug on cutting back on the salt intake. So the last letter we're going to cover today is the letter J, and J is for jackfruit, right? So if you've been anywhere near or thought about going plant-based, jackfruit is probably something you have definitely heard of. So I've got some fun facts here. So jackfruit is actually the largest tree fruit in the world, and one fruit can weigh up to 100 pounds. Now, if you've been in your grocery store, because some stores, especially where I live, I've noticed they do carry them. These things are huge and they look weird. They look like they're shaped like watermelons, but they have a bumpy exterior. You're like, what is that? Those are probably fresh jackfruit. They're indigenous to South India, and they're in the same family as figs and mulberries. Interesting. Due to their size and the sticky quality of the fruit, fresh jackfruit can be a little bit intimidating to cut up and prepare. There are videos on Google. I recommend you look those up. So I use the canned version because that's the canned version is what's used to replace meat. Because it does have a sweet taste, like the raw fruit is sweet. They say it has a taste similar to juicy fruit gum. So of course you don't want that when you're trying to make meat. So that's the difference between fresh and canned jackfruit. So I have to say the first time, and I think the canned jackfruit is more ripe if I remember correctly. So because fresh jackfruit again has a subtle sweet and fruity flavor, kind of like apples, bananas, pineapple, mango, kind of think that's think that flavor profile. So you don't want to use fresh jackfruit when you're using it to make like a pulled pork recipe. So keep that in mind. So honestly, though, the first time I tried jackfruit, I was not a fan. It was in a barbecue recipe and I was like, ugh, this is gross. I don't like it. But, I'm always telling my son, try new things. I was like, okay, let me practice what I preach and, give it a try. Well, I did it myself with my own barbecue sauce that I kind of made up myself. And I love it. I've used it since as a faux fish cake. I've used it in crab cakes. You can even use it as a substitute for pulled chicken because it has a really weird, it's amazing texture. I don't say weird. The texture is really, once you open it up, once you open the can, the textures look like big chunks of meat, and then you pull it apart and it has a shredded pork look. It's real, or pulled pork look. It's really, really cool. Because it's kind of bland, like tofu, you really can season it curry, barbecue, Creole, however you want to do it. So So when I make it, like, for example, when I use it in my faux crab cakes, I put it in my food processor with some hearts of palm and shred that up, pulse it a couple of times, and then it looks like lump crab meat. I'm telling you. So if you know, you know with jackfruit, it's really like pretty cool. Nutritionally, it has it really packs a punch. It has, again, antioxidants, vitamins A and C. Vitamin A is important for your A health. Vitamin C helps protect your skin and from the sun. It's got a ton of B vitamins. It also has minerals, which are important for bone, muscle, and nerves, such as potassium and magnesium. And it's thought that that's important because potassium helps lower blood pressure and, again, decreases risk for stroke and heart attack. And despite being a fruit, jackfruit has a good amount of protein, about 3 grams per cup. Not tons, but some, right? Because, sometimes people are concerned, vegans or plant-based people don't get enough protein. Well, here's another way to incorporate protein into your plant-based diet. Just like any other fruit, jackfruit has plenty of phytonutrients, which are those beneficial chemicals made by plants that help prevent, you guessed it, cancer, heart disease, eye degeneration, you name it, joint inflammation. They can also help, jackfruit can also help diabetics lower their blood sugar because it's absorbed and processed by the body slower than other fruits. It doesn't affect diabetics' blood sugars like, say, a piece of an orange would. So it has a low glycemic index, which is that number that we measure to see how high your blood sugar spikes after you eat something. But diabetics who eat a lot of jackfruit should watch your blood sugars, particularly if they're on any medicines, of course, that lower their blood sugars, because your doctor may need to adjust them so that you don't get your sugar too low. So the book, of course, features my recipe for pulled pork with my homemade barbecue sauce. I call it my tablespoon sauce because literally it's a tablespoon of everything: a tablespoon of onion powder, a tablespoon of garlic powder, a tablespoon of smoked paprika, some other stuff in there that I was moved to make my own because one day I was in my refrigerator and the barbecue sauce I had in there had high fructose corn syrup. And I didn't know that. When I bought it, I didn't read the label. And I had to make my own. So we know high fructose corn syrup plays a role in increasing diabetes and liver problems and so forth. So if you've got high fructose corn syrup in your food, you definitely want to get rid of that. And the beauty of my recipe with the barbecue sauce, you can tweak it however you like. If you want more heat, add more cayenne pepper. If you want it smokier, add more smoked paprika or liquid smoke. If you want it tangier, you can add more vinegar. You can, totally make it your own. So that is my time. It's been so much fun. I can talk about food all day long. But today we have covered H for herbs, I for Indian spices, and J for jackfruit. So right there, you've got a meal. You've got some jackfruit. You've got some Indian spices. We pretty much have made a meal. So herbs, you put some cardamom, you put some cinnamon, garam masala, like we talked about, and you've got a meal. So if you've missed A through G, please go back and check them out. Tune in next week. We're going to be doing K, L, and M, right? That's next in the alphabet. So I'm going to get out of here, but please, please, please be sure to follow me on all social media at Physician in the Kitchen. If you have burning questions, food questions, please drop them. Slide in my DM. Let me know. You can email me at info@drmoniquemay.com. If your question gets answered online or on the air, you will get a free autographed copy of my book, Doc Fix My Plate book, which you can also purchase at docfixmyplatebook.com. So love to hear from you. Get the book, share it. We're coming into holiday gift giving season. What better gift than to give the foodie in your life or just someone who's thinking about becoming plant-based? Give them a copy of this book. So docfixmyplatebook.com. As always, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me. Invest in your health one plate at a time. Eat the rainbow. And this is Dr. Monique wishing you good food and good health. Till next time.